guys, it's Ken the Murphy guys. I'm reviewing this a movie that I was very much looking forward to. Was actually my most anticipated movies of the month in general, and now I have finally seen it, and that is A Wrinkle in Time. And what A Wrinkle in Time is essentially about is we focus on the character of Meg Murray. Basically, she has this very talented father who is a scientist, and he works effortlessly, and he wants to find a way to create this wrinkle between space and time where someone will be able to just travel through light years in the blink of an eye pretty much. And because he is so dedicated, somehow he ends up getting taken, and he's basically, they've been without him for 5 years, and eventually, with the help of her very precocious brother, they stumble upon these 3 witches who basically set a plan to help them possibly track down their father and maybe give them some information on what's really going down. So she goes on a quest with her brother and her friend to hopefully track down her father and see really what's going on, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Wrinkle in Time, like I said, I was really looking forward to this movie. I think Disney lately has really been knocking it out of the park, honestly, between their live-action remakes and their animated films. They just really have been impressing me, I have to say. And A Wrinkle in Time seemed like a really interesting move for them because, sure, this is something that they've done before, but not in a theatrical standpoint. You know, if you guys don't know, A Wrinkle in Time, it is a book, of course, which I have not read this book, but it was a TV movie on the wonderful world of Disney, and now, of course, this is the theatrical movie. I thought this had so much, talent behind it. It was Ava DuVernay. I mean, I really thought this was going to be good, and it kind of sucks. Let me just say, this is not at all a bad movie. It's just a very, very disappointing one with a lot of missed opportunities and just a very underwritten story in general that really could have been a lot more. We're just getting into it now, starting off with the cast. Here's the thing when it comes to this movie. The best way to describe it is hit or miss, and almost everything in this movie kind of falls into that category, and that is the same when it comes to the acting. There's some acting here that is really great. There's some that is not so great. But let's first talk about Storm Reid, our main character here, who I was really looking forward to seeing her. Now, this is not really a well-known actress, and something I think Disney has done very well is they've taken, smaller actors and really turned them into much bigger stars. Look at someone like Lily James. Ever since Cinderella, she's been doing a lot more stuff, and after this movie, I think Storm Reid has the potential to really become a pretty big star. She really did a great job in this movie as a character of Meg. I really did like her here. She takes what is, for the most part, a very small, very limited role and really brings a lot of emotion into it. She definitely does a good job with that overall. It's not an amazing performance. She does sometimes have a hard time with, figuring out what emotion to use. Any scene where she's supposed to be surprised, sometimes it's not really that believable, but it is still a well-done performance, and I did think she did a good job overall here, and I think for the most part did carry this movie pretty well. However, the thing I'm sure you all want me to talk about are, of course, the 3 witches here, Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Witch, and let me just say that despite the talent, Oprah Winfrey, Reese, Witherspoon, and Mindy Kaling, I don't have a lot to say about them because they're not really in this movie all that much. We'll get more into that with the writing, but I'll just say right off the bat, Oprah I thought was really good. I thought that she had a lot of wisdom in her. She seemed like the most charismatic of the 3. Reese Witherspoon, on the other hand, this is like the definition of a downgrade. I mean, coming off the heels of her really great performance in Big Little Lies, which to me is like her best performance ever, she really is not good in this movie. She's supposed to be like the comic relief, and it really does not work. I really was not a fan of her. Mindy Kaling is, I think, completely wasted, but I will say I did think they worked well together overall. They did have good chemistry. I just really wanted a lot more from them, and I can't really say too much about them, unfortunately. The rest of the cast here, I think, like I said, again, falls in that category of hit or miss. Chris Pine, of course, is great. He really does a good job as Meg's father, despite the fact that he's very limited in this movie. I thought he was really good. Once again, Gugu Mbtatha-Raw continues to really impress me. She has a lot of emotional scenes in this movie, and they're all pretty believable. I actually really did like her character. I wish we saw more of her. I thought she did a really good job. However, the kid actors in this movie besides Storm Reid, no. I mean, Levi Miller's okay. I will say that. You know, I thought his best performance is still Better Watch Out for Me. I thought that was that kind of turned around his career a bit. But he's okay here. Her brother, on the other hand, oh no. Her brother, and I hate saying this because he is a young kid, but this is honestly probably one of the worst child performances I've seen in quite a while, honestly. And again, I don't like picking on a kid because they are so young, and I believe he's only like 9 years old, and hey, maybe at some point he will be a good actor. He's just not right now, and the problem is I would be able to overlook this if he didn't play such a substantial role in the movie, and unfortunately, Charles Wallace really does. He has a huge role in this movie. In fact, you can make an argument that he's like the second main character of this movie, especially in the third act, and it's honestly, a lot of his line delivery made me physically cringe. He's one of those actors where they have him shout like every line kind of to mask the fact that he's not really that great of an actor, and it just did not work. I was not a fan of him at all. And again, I don't know if he has a future a few years from now, but right now, ooh, no, he is not an actor in any sense of the word. So I really, like I said, was not a fan of him. Michael Pena, Zach Galifianakis, they do what they need to do, but for the most part, they're basically completely wasted in this movie. They have almost nothing to do. Same with Holland, same Rowan Blanchard. That's really all I've seen when it comes to the acting. But now let's get to what I really want to talk about, which is the directing and the writing. Which, the directing, this is the only thing I will say that is not hit or miss for me. I do think the tone of this movie was pretty well realized. It's clear that Ava DuVernay was going for something, especially after the films that she's done, which for the most part have been like, you know, sort of these, one was a biopic, you know, one was a documentary, and these, you know, social commentaries on racism and things like that. This is really kind of, it's not deviating from that, because I do still think it has some prevalent themes and you know, timely stuff in there, but this is definitely much more grandiose and a much larger scale than her other films have, and I do think for the most part she did a good job at conveying the emotion there, the tone. You do get that adventurous feel at points. I did think she did a good job with that. I thought that she did a good job in tapping into some of the more weirder things in this movie, and I do admire her for, you know, taking risks and for going there and for making some really audacious decisions, because this is a film that does have some challenging stuff, and I did think she did a good job with the directing. However, the biggest problem with this movie, without a doubt, is the writing, because everyone's going to say this, and I'm going to agree. The best way to describe this movie is just disjointed. It really is. It's so disjointed, and it doesn't really know what it wants to be, because sure, the movie at its core is about Meg trying to track down her father, but there's not really a lot of time spent there. I mean, right off the bat, in the beginning of the movie, there's like one or two scenes seeing these two together, and then like the first 5 minutes we find out her father was taken, and it honestly comes out of nowhere. And I thought we were going to spend about 20 or so minutes with her father so we could get attached to him, and then he just vanishes. And I think that would have been a lot better if they would have gone in that direction, because hey, we were more attached to a character, and it's not that we don't. I mean, Pine is so likable in the role, and you really do care for him here. But in general, I just did not feel as attached as I think the movie really wanted me to be, because again, I felt there was a lot of underused characters, and particularly the relation between Gugu Mbtatha-Raw and Chris Pine. They're both, you know, we get into the movie, we find out they're both scientists, and they have very differing perspectives, and there's one scene that's very compelling where Pine has a specific way of looking at science, and everyone's like ridiculing him for it, but we don't really go more than that, and that's the thing with this movie. It's very, very surface level. It feels like they really weren't willing to peel back the layers of some of these characters a bit, and that really did disappoint me. I expected a lot more from an Ava DuVernay film, and I don't know if I can really fault her, because she didn't write this movie, but whoever did, I was really kind of disappointed with the lack of effort put into these characters. I mean, most of them are very bland. Even someone like Meg, her whole character is is just simply the nerdy weird girl, and that's really all there is to her, who's like acting out a lot because her father's missing, and that's really all there is to her as a character. Her brother's just like the precocious know-it-all that's really annoying after like a few minutes. Levi Miller is just the troubled kid who's popular and he is in the movie for some reason. But that's nothing compared to some of the other side characters in this movie. Like I said, the three witches in the film almost have nothing to do, and I was very surprised because, you know, that's the thing everyone's hyping up. Holy shit, Oprah Winfrey, Reese Witherspoon, Mindy Kaling. I mean, such great talent peppered throughout this film. And yes, there is great talent, but 90% of that talent is almost completely wasted. I mean, those three witches... There's a point in the movie where they go off to tell them, oh, we're going to talk to, we have to have a conversation with your mother, but stay there and then we'll regroup. And I was thinking we were going to cut back to that, and we never do. In fact, we never hear them talk about the conversation. It's almost as if that wasn't important, and I don't understand why they even did that. To me, I kind of forgot they were in this movie halfway through because they just kind of disappear. They're there and then they're gone, and that's the same for someone like Galifianakis and Micheal Pena. I don't know what the point of their characters were here, other than just to add, you know, add on minutes to the runtime. Other than that, I have no idea where they were here. They really didn't do anything in this movie whatsoever for me. Also, I have to say, like I said, these characters are extremely flat, and especially compared to Rowan Blanchard. I mean, Rowan Blanchard has to be one of the flattest mean girl characters I've seen in a while, because she starts off this movie, she's just like the bitchy mean girl, and they try to give her like this one thing to develop layers to her, and I honestly don't know why. Why was she a legit character in this movie? Why did they go in this direction with her? It makes no sense. There's like, she's like such a non-entity here, and every time they're cutting back to her, I'm like, why is she here? It just does not feel like she needs to be in this movie. Holland as well, they give him like this random thing, they never go back to it. It's just so disjointed, and it feels like a chunk of this movie was removed, and I don't know if that's actually true, but it very much does seem that way. I would not be surprised if when the Blu-ray comes out, there's like an extended cut or something, because it really did feel like what was supposed to be a 2-hour movie was instead condensed to a, you know, hour and 40-something minute movie, and it just does not work. It's way too short, and I think they could have developed this a lot more, honestly. Also, there is a good message in this movie. I definitely will say that. I do think the message here is very well done. It's a message about, you know, being yourself and not being afraid of who you really are, and to, you know, love yourself and all this good stuff. The problem is the movie beats you over the head to the point where you just don't really care about the message, and you start to get very annoyed, and honestly, I was getting really irritated. I'm like, all right, I get it. The movie's about loving yourself. You don't have to keep alluding to it constantly. Like, they really don't stop. They keep going back to it, and it's just so obvious what the main message is here, and I don't know why, you know, they kept making it seem like it wasn't obvious, because it clearly was very obvious what the message was here, and like I said, that definitely did bother me. There's also a lot of things in this movie that are just kind of glossed over, and they're kind of looked at as, oh, you know, there are certain places they go to, and you're like, oh, that's actually really cool, but then they never really go back to it. Like, for example, the scene in the trailer where you see all those, like, little kids, they're, like, bouncing these balls, and then they have a mom come in to tell them to come to dinner. I don't know what the point of this scene was other than to add suspense. I don't really know why that was here. It's so inconsequential. There are a lot of scenes like that in this movie, and again, they just really pissed me off because I felt like that time that was spent in those scenes could have been spent with developing these characters more, and they just really didn't. The cinematography here, once again, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes it looks really great, like just looking at the landscapes, just the scope of it all is actually really cool. There's a scene, for example, where Mrs. Who, not Mrs. Who, actually, Mrs. What's-It, she transforms into this plant-like creature, and it looks really cool. I really like like the effects there. However, when the kids get on said creature, it looks like a special effect, and it does not seem like they are actually attached to that creature. So yes, there are points where the cinematography does look really great, and I do think there was a lot of good cinematography in here. However, it's just a bit too obvious, and for Disney standards, I expect a lot more, especially coming off the heels of what they did in something like The Jungle Book, where it was so seamless, and Beauty and the Beast as well. I mean, they felt like they were a part of the world. Here, it doesn't really feel like that. They feel like special effects. They don't really feel like they are tangible in this universe. It just feels like they added them here, and you know, they tried to make it look all glossy and everything, and it just feels very style over substance at points. It really does. The score I really do love, I have to say, when they're not playing random pop songs, because there are points in this movie where they'll just randomly cut to a pop song. It's very weird, particularly one scene involving all of them in this cave. They start playing this pop song. It's one of the strangest cut to montage sequences I've seen in quite a while. It was so abrupt, it came out of nowhere, and it was very strange. And again, most of what we see in this montage is almost never talked about again. I don't know why they even showed us some of this stuff. It was very out of place overall and very jarring. But the score overall, I'm talking about like the musical score, is really great. You get that sense of adventure, you get that, you know, wonderment that you want in the movie, and I do think that was definitely very well handled. Like I said, though, the movie is definitely very underrated. It's also way too short. I think the movie honestly should have been 2 hours, so we could have gotten more into these characters. We should have spent a good chunk of time with the Murrays before, you know, Meg's father disappeared. We could have gotten more into that. We could have gotten more into him and Gugu and Mbtatha-Raw's relationship. We could have gone more Rowan, Blanchard, Andre Holland. Why are they showing these characters? This movie as a whole just felt very underwritten and a huge misfire. I just really wanted a lot more from it, and at the end, I just felt very hollow. There are some good moments in this movie, but there are so far few in between, and also, you know, so much of the movie is relying on these characters and relying on these actors, and Reid really does try her best here. Like I said, same can't really be said for her brother, who I think is literally one of the worst child performances I've seen in a very long time. But other than that, there really isn't too much to recommend here. There's some good acting. There's some good scenes in this film. But just as a whole, it really did not come together at all. And unfortunately, while I really wanted to enjoy this movie, I am going to give A Wrinkle in Time overall a C-. Look, I love Disney, I really do, and Disney's got a lot of cool stuff coming out this year. Mary Poppins Returns, Christopher Robin, stuff I'm really excited about, but this one just did not work. This is a huge misfire in every way possible, so much so the kids that were in my theater didn't even seem that into it. They kept getting on, they kept running around, asking when the movie was going to end. It's just not something that I honestly would recommend. It definitely is one of the biggest disappointments of the year for sure. I saw a lot more potential in this movie, but most of it was almost completely squandered here. But that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought more overall. Left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.